Hello. So, I would like to share to you who is a part of me and at the same time is me, as I am you and a part of you. And so I am moved to record this so that I can share to a variety of people that I feel like it is time to consider a new cycle where we can pool ourselves into a more interwoven, tightly knit fabric. And it seems to me that there is a need to find a way to market what might seem to be priceless. And as we give, we will receive. Not in the expectation of we should receive a certain amount of money, or that it's even money in certain instances, or that it's even something from another person, and it might be a form of rejection that helps us claim further independence, resilience, and openness to a higher understanding of how we can thrive on this planet without feeling we need to have to survive. A big question a lot of people are experiencing every day. And they've been experiencing it throughout history, but it's just sometimes often not allowed to be really challenged. So, the first thing that I would like to say is that I feel we've reached a point where it's important to try to localize the global potential to create some planned, some unplanned experiences of teaching and serving together. And the teaching and the serving, I think, can come in through various forms. For some people it's art, so for some people it's science-based related experimentation, but they are so interwoven and so interrelated, as with many other fields. If the heart, the consciousness is balanced and refined from the lies that are found in this world to get us to categorize each other and label each other, and still fear that we can stand up and say no to the system that says we're all normal human beings. It's just some of us choose to be evil, when in fact, certain people have had a record of doing certain things, and it can be hard to see the record. But we know about narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths. Some call them other names, and I don't necessarily feel like it's important to all agree on the same name. But what I think we are finding out is, in order to create a universal bank or a pool of energy from which we are helping each other decide what we might need in order to accomplish the experience of raising consciousness and helping people and providing time and space for activities that we can do together, even though we might have different fields of interest. And one thing that I've been drawn to I guess, experience is this as an oasis, and interacting with people that walk around and seeing what we can experience together, what we can do together, and perhaps what we don't have to do together, because I think there's a big part of the conversation that it's not about becoming president and campaigning for some very specific cause that must happen. There are certain, so I'm going to take a step back here, and I feel there's going to be a processing mechanism that helps us when we interact with people, how they might be able to join in on a universal energy system, that if what we give generates back to us money, we can have a database where we track whether there's a reason behind someone giving or not, or displaying a reason. I think it can be very important for transparency, but sometimes people will give without a reason that they feel they have to tell, because sometimes we don't need to say anything in order to give. But the point is, in order to trust each other with money, being able to express money in different fields, real estate, law, government, I know that sounds crazy, healthcare, medicine, there's other arts, many architecture and construction are kind of really poisoned arts, because there aren't a lot of geometric, symmetrical principles in our modern society. So I'm at 9 minutes, and I guess one point that I want to get across is I see that there can be a monetary fund for those of us who pass certain checks and balances involved with being able to develop a processing curriculum, an inventory that discerns how we can steer through the various lies from every institution, from religion to science to politics to medicine to history to economics to agriculture to music and clothing, cooking. So in order to trust each other that we can build something better or create something better, I think we have to have some fundamental principles that we agree on that help us refine or filter those people and those ideologies that do not really want to grow, that do not really want to see the mirror in their relationships, in their job, in their circumstances, in their health, in their gift to serve something that raises the whole of humanity. And I think this movement, which I met at this spot, someone here the other day, and we had an agreement to be a part of a movement that's been going on throughout time at a different level. It was called My Own Church, and he's going to legalize it in some form. And we were going to see what we can experience together, what we can do and what we cannot do together. Both are very important, and I feel place can be, we enhance our abilities. And you don't have to do it here. Sometimes I'm on the sidewalk, or I'm sometimes on a bus, or sometimes I'm in a building. And not always are you allowed to express yourself to other people in many ways that you feel reflects your passion and your specialty. But anyways, taking advantage of the freedom we have to increase that freedom. And ideas like this can be used, share our experience, share our stories, hold counsel towards what we can agree on and what we may not agree on, and see then how we can come together and help others. And I feel like there is a triangle of information that fits my specialty. You'll have other shapes, or maybe you'll have other triangles with yourself about what really clicks for you. And we don't have to agree necessarily on the logo or on the name, or perhaps on all the rules for how we process someone as trustworthy to making a decision on who gets what, and how do we receive something based on what we have given, or some part of us that is given. And that's like a confusing and kind of jarbled statement, but we all have needs, and I feel like if we can't provide the essential need that a lot of people require for their growth in themselves, in their service to others, it will be hard to maintain our needs that we have, or could have. So the 3 points of the triangle for me is related to Nuno Alves, Kim Michaels, and H.C. Randall Stevens. This is not necessarily a very profit-focused venture based on the information that a lot of people would agree to in a majority. But in the long term, these three sources that I mentioned, to me, help expand our perspective of the influence this planet has with other planets, other civilizations, grounded in knowledge and literature for becoming the rights that can speak out and decree a different reality that serves the people rather than the elite, rather than the ego that wants to categorize everyone by a word and ignore personal responsibility to detach from having to achieve specific results on Earth and still maintain a foundation, a network that enables us to live closer together, work closer together, and expand our consciousness so that we can eventually see that we can graduate in a shorter period of time than what we may have thought, from being able to have to continue to reincarnate, which I know some people disagree with, and I might send this video to some of these people who might disagree with that concept, and we all have the ability to dictate if we are willing to receive dictation from the heart. And when I say dictate, I mean bring forth an embodied expression of the living word, the living life that wants creativity, it wants to bring the arts, the sciences, the inspiration, the hope, the culture into a new paradigm, which in Aquarius, it will revolve in a somewhat balance between technology and in-person interaction. And in my, conscious perception. So, do I have anything else that I want to say? What's the website going to be? Is there a white paper? Is there a constitution? Is there a declaration? Is there a mission statement? Is there an about me page, a contact page? Frequently asked questions? Is there book material? Are there pamphlets, manuals, leaflets? Are there events planned where we will be sharing our experiences in a circle, or even if we're in a square, we can still create a circle by allowing everyone an experience to share themselves. And so I was talking to my friend yesterday about how it can be difficult to talk about discernment around a variety of topics if we are very attached to a particular idea that we think is ultimately right or true. And a lot of people can say, "Oh, I don't want to interact with these people," or that type of consciousness, that type of movement, because I don't agree with that thing that they have that I think is super, super important. And it might have a lot of value on planet Earth, such as the concept of free will. Is it a concept? The concept of how there is no real concept as an ultimate reality that's generating life, that's generating choices, that's generating the rise and fall of civilization. It doesn't. So, yeah, that was an example, okay? and I can see the other side of the coin. There's truth on the other side of the coin. But anyways, that one was probably a little tough, but I'm gonna take a step back here and just say at 20 minutes, I am not so capable in my current circumstances of working with technology in a professional way, other than like use of my phone, which is a form of a computer, which is a high spectrum of capacity to create different elements of expression. And so you may not agree with my triangle of why certain people might be the way they are because of past lifetimes, past experiments on different planets, in relation to the literature and the lore of the human story, and how we can see ourselves in that story and having value and a certain purpose throughout that time, and still have some material that we can be assisted with that helps us call out the illusions and the lies. And there are other beings who are more than happy to help us see that we are them, and but we may have to tune and refine the dial of the heart to that station that allows clarity on certain topics, and we might have to study certain topics more in depth. There are certain discernment mechanisms that I would not be able to talk about, such as like in physics or in medicine, but architecture maybe. But I feel on some level we have some intuition and maybe some knowledge that can help us see the way to use these institutional knowledge centers for an acceleration of consciousness. And I see that we all have the ability to be the mouthpiece of a variety of different principles, different beings. I know I've said that twice, but I don't think I have anything else to say other than this is kind of the message that I would like to be presenting to people. And I have developed not my drawing, and yet we are all part of the drawing. And on the back side, it leads to a circle paper that I wrote. And I can talk about the meaning behind it, but I think I would like to create something similar that ties people into I don't know exactly. I'm not firmly decided on this, but in that thing that I just showed you contains kind of what I have just talked to you about. And it has an open contact line if people would like to continue our development together. Learning and teaching are two vital importance of the path. And not everyone is meant to necessarily be a teacher in this lifetime, but I think we all have the ability to teach on some level Well, at least those of us who have passed a certain level of consciousness that isn't about violence and us versus them, good versus evil, right versus wrong, rich versus poor, capitalist versus communist, religion versus science, masculine versus feminine, circles versus squares, invisible beings, physics and metaphysics. So 25 minutes. Anything else do I want to say? I think it would be positive if I maybe use social media to create events that were about this spirit, this principle, this potential reality actualizing in our consciousness. And I think it's important to try to generate a place online where people can try to see how we can work together physically, spiritually, financially, creatively, psychologically. In terms of building spaces for community, commune, ashram, sangha, mystery school. We are the mystery school, but we can't see that unless we see the web. All the various levels and gradations, shades of the river of life and the realm of duality, division, and disintegration. So that's, I think, what I wanted to say. And I feel like there will be people who step forward in the financial sector, in the agricultural sector, in the technological, scientific sector, working with blockchain, working with law, working with politics, working with pottery, cooking, cleaning. You know, there's a certain skill in cleaning. But with the way society is and the practical reality, it's still understandable. We may have a regular job, but I think at the same time a lot of us are holding space for potentials of distributing our energy into different sources that allow us to have more independence, sovereignty, agency, in what might be known as a decentralized, autonomous organization, sometimes referred to as a co-op, a cooperative. And I have said my piece for the most part. I could continue, but I am grateful to have this experience. And I would like to share more about how my triangle that is within another triangle, or that has a surrounding geometry, which isn't just the triangle shape, but to keep this simple, I may even use this video to reach out to some of the what do they call it? Instruments, conductors, for what I would consider my knowledge of wisdom, or I guess my record of reality. and how that might in some way get us closer to making more transparent the phenomenon known as the Akashic Records, which it is not my place at this current time to have to specialize in for telling people particular instances that has happened, possibly some things that could happen. I don't think the records necessarily. It's up to the observer to determine the combinations and variables for what records that have happened in the past could create possibilities that happen in the future. So that's pretty much everything that I wanted to say. You're welcome to share. How are you doing, or how are you not doing? You're welcome to share anything that is in your experience, but if you do not wish to be involved, you don't have to say anything. I am just happy to present this next level to those who may experience the river of life that holds the vision that society will become something that is very hard to imagine for most people today, in a time frame that, well, I'm not going to get into, but for now, in our lifetime, even if you're 100 years old, or perhaps if today's your last day in this body or on this planet, or maybe it's your first time here, those are very rare accounts. All I have to say is thank you for reflecting the infinite inside of this grand orchestra that seems so finite. But working with what we have, we can eventually see the patterns and the possibilities that help us stand in our heart and our mind, in balance and clarity, and courage and strength. Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. That which was, is now, and forever will be. The One. Flame. Within all. So I would like to create an ending for the video that I just made, that I consider the beginning. And that ending is about the triangle that I consider to be the pillars that I would say gives me a strong foundation for my purpose, my way of navigating and discerning the choices that I have. And I would like to just touch on, there's probably a community behind, on some level, my triangle. And I want to open the space up to your triangle. You may not have a triangle. You might have a hexagon that you consider is very important. And when I say hexagon, or a triangle, I mean different points a part of the same structure that have notable qualities for your life and for your path and perhaps even your experience. And so the 3 points that I feel I can bring to the table is the development of some type of infusion between a certain knowledge base that simplifies some story regarding Atlantis, regarding the dynamics of other civilizations that are not on this planet, and how, I don't even know if civilizations is always completely the word to use, but other beings, other life evolutions, how there are different ways there is growth and expansion of consciousness through what might be more internal versus external mediums and pathways, masculine and feminine relation, technology and psychology, and then there's a certain point that refers to the, more explicitly, the Ascended Masters in its own lexicon, and how we can use tools, invocations, teachings to understand the multiverse, the dynamic of institutions and ideologies, identifications, to dealing with the power elite that is visible and invisible, dealing with others that may not be narcissists but still have many distractions, trapdoors, lies that twist basic principles about our identity, about the evolution of Earth and how life grows in consciousness without necessarily having to be about violence, without having it to be about exploitation or an objectification. Even mind-altering substances is another thing, but conspiracies may have some truth, but they are often in the minority of having truth. So the 3 points that I feel that I can work on, write about, solidify in some form in my interactions with people is the relation between Kim Michaels, H.C. Randall Stevens, and Nuno Alves. This guy's yelling. There's a lot of energy that's been unresolved and now it's coming out. He's yelling very loud. It kind of caused me to pause for a moment. But anyways, I feel like between Nuno Alves, H.C. Randall Stevens, who has now transitioned. That is my intuition. I'm open to being wrong. And Kim Michaels, in terms of financial compensation for sharing key elements to us about them in our own story, in our own experience, in our own service, in our own circumstance, in our own challenges, in our own activities, and so on and so forth. Did I say relationships? That is part of, I feel, my purpose, and creating, maybe like continuing to refine, like, I don't, a website, social media, a newsletter. These are, to me, are they cherries on the cake? Icing on the cake? To me, I consider it as the tail to the head. And the tail, I think, can be, the beginning and the ending, the alpha and the omega, the masculine and the feminine, the positive and the negative, the circle and the square. And the head, the beginning, is just interacting with people. Maybe it's just interacting with myself in a genuine way that's not trying to hide certain potentials to determine who wants to be part of this movement and who doesn't want to be part of this movement. And so I mentioned something about financial compensation, and regarding rights, legal binding laws in relation to our triangle. You might not have my triangle as the representative of your triangle, but if Nuno Alves and Kim Michaels they would probably want to have a series of conversations about how financial compensation and donation can be transparent, how it can be held accountable, how it can be put into a type of processing constitution that helps us democratically determine how funds are released, or how much funds are we open to receiving. Do we accept from anonymous people without giving their intentions? And I think the context will be a big part of that. I talked about a little bit about that in the other video, but anyways, and there's probably a whole complex, specific layout that will eventually need to be put on paper and then sent to various officials in the government, in various agencies, to help us follow through in what we are capable of, and getting the permission we need to perform and demonstrate what it is in our field that we can demonstrate. And the person that I met here the other day is working through a non-profit church legalizing action, so that when we pay our taxes, we can not be taxed. But I think the basic essence of this is, whether we agree that the name is my own church or some other name, my own movement, the universal movement, the one flame, I think what matters is trying to coordinate and communicate with those who might want to dig deeper in how we can refine the mechanisms for allocating and distributing money, but also processing mechanisms for how we discern the principles that could raise us or lower us, unite us or divide us. And I don't feel in this current time very strong in accessing, I guess it would be in creating from a bigger my environmental circumstance is challenging, but I feel like it still is allowing me to grow. And do I have anything else that I wanted to say? The people in my triangle might say no to a universal fund, that if people are willing to agree to the main tenets of this knowledge database that I consider to be wisdom and truth, at a certain level of consciousness that I know will eventually be transcended and replaced by higher levels of consciousness and understandings and experiences as we proceed with our evolution as a spiritual being, as the creator that may often refer to itself as a spiritual being, a co-creator, a conscious agent. But anyways, I think one step next would be sharing this communication with my foundation, those who, and seeing if there's an agreement or not. And if there isn't an agreement, that I can use their material in the movement. I will take the principles from what I've gained from them, and I won't use perhaps the exact terminology to define the wisdom and knowledge that could be put into a curriculum. And we all, I think, in some form, I think we're all doing that indirectly in our interactions. We're discerning but when money enters the picture, when means of exchange become a type of critical factor, I think it's very important to be transparent in how much information is being used from our own individual experience and how much information is being shared from their own, how shall we say, their own energy system. And to me, I don't want to say anything further, but my friend who I talked to the other day here, he had some recommendations for how the movement can be, or how the church could be, how the Sangha, the ashram, the community of the fire, of the heart, of the vision, the beacon, the citadel. So I've shared what I wanted to share, and I am sure there are other people that will step into the picture that will help deal with the intricacies, even though I think it's important for all of us to consider some degree of the intricacies, even though economics, physics may not be our specialty. Painting, dancing may not be our specialty. But I think we're moving closer to a time where we can begin to see ourselves capable of a variety of specialties, even though it might be more feminine or more masculine based in how we understand those words. But for now, I feel the future is here. And the funds will become available as we continue to see the way to fund our heart that is one with every heart, and then complexify it through the mind and dance with specifics and complex dynamic paradigms, geometries, choreography, symphonies, and the needs for protesting, especially rioting, will become less a driving factor on some level as the means for change, as we see the revolution in consciousness that will be the primary form of change into that state that we, I think, want. But we also recognize there will be many protests. There will probably be some riots given the state of the collective and the way we've dealt with things in the past. And they aren't necessarily bad things or shouldn't happen. But anyways, they can take up a lot of energy. But anyways, I don't want to hammer down on this. But I think it sounds utopian to have a universal fund for those of us who agree to some of the basic principles that were known in Atlantis, in Egypt, and through the passing of the Piscean into the Aquarian Age, we've learned much more about free will, about the variety of beings that exist here, working with Earth, and the tools and capacities and even the powers that we have. Maybe we might call it more of an authority rather than the power to shift very imbalanced paradigms that have had a long reign on this planet without having to use force or without having to remove an enemy or even label someone as an enemy. But for now, I'm not going to go into that right now. Is there anything else that I would like to say? I think it's so cool that I could just do this through my phone and I could reach so many of you around the world. And so eventually we can make film where we can put our recordings together, our music together, our perceptions together, and edit the script that can put all the pieces of daily life together, where we are all in some way trying to help each other get see our tests, our circumstances as opportunities, and continue on with the grand dance of form and formlessness. Is there anything else that I wanted to say? I'm not gonna define for you certain timelines for certain professional statements that would be publicized on the internet, but I want that to naturally and organically be created. And it's okay to plan these things, but I face a lot of pressure, so I don't want to overpressure myself. Planning can really put a lot of pressure, especially when you don't have a lot of, well, it's like the opposite side of the coin. I still have many blessings, but it's in the reverse order of what I think a lot of people would consider when they have a lot of access to technology, home, environment, traditional, typical conditions. I don't have that. On a variety of levels, on some level, but even for speaking about all of this, they will threaten you that you will have to leave, even if it's just temporary, for speaking about this, when they have not surveyed the people if they really do not want me to speak. The staff can be twisted in a way where it stops the force that's trying to support it. History. That's all I wanted to say. That's all I wanted. 25 minutes? Well, time is relative. Unless you see the objective, timeless reality, then you can sort of see how it can affect, but it's always never an ultimate determiner for our experience. All right. Thank you.